In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
It is 100% real. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Dimension podcast, where we venture into the unknown and explore the mysteries that lie beyond our world. Today, we have an exciting episode featuring documentary filmmaker Darcy Weir, known for his captivating works such as Dark Alliance and Pascagoula 73. In this episode, we'll engage in a thorough discussion with Darcy about his unique approach to documenting UFO phenomena, focusing on specific aspects rather than the broad strokes often seen in other films. He'll share insights into recent developments in ufology, including new witnesses stepping forward and the influential figures that shape this field. Darcy will also recount his own personal experiences and sightings that ignited his passion for UFOs, leading him to the intriguing world of filmmaking. We'll touch on the impact of Gaia TV, legal battles involving notable personalities like Corey Goode, and the crucial need for scientific investigation into phenomena like crop circles. As we wrap up, prepare for a fascinating exploration of the diverse origins of UFOs, as Darcy shares his speculative thoughts on ultra-terrestrials, extraterrestrials, and even time travelers. So buckle up and get ready for an enlightening conversation with Darcy Weir. All right, Darcy, we are rocking and rolling. How are you today?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. I've been looking forward to having you on the show. Got a lot of questions for you. I'm a big fan of your work. The two most recent documentaries of yours that I've watched that I want to dig into is Dark Alliance and Pascagoula 73. Both excellent documentaries. One of the things I'm noticing that you're doing with your work is that you're picking a specific topic within the field of UFOs or crop circles or whatever it is, and you're really digging into that particular aspect of it. A lot of documentaries I see, they talk about dozens of cases, trying to almost present an argument for the fact that the UFO phenomena is happening. I feel like people are up to speed now and they're aware that at least something is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like it's time to drill down, and that's what you're doing. Do you see that as something you're trying to do, or where do you see your work going?
I feel like when you watch one of my documentaries, you're watching the flow of information as I perceive it regarding a certain aspect of the phenomenon. Storytelling is important, like getting the story correct and portraying the history of it is also important. But it's how I think, and it's how I look at each aspect when you're watching one of my documentaries. Yeah, just uncovering new aspects of stories that maybe people have not heard before. All these sort of things are my goals.
So really it's what you want to know in real time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the way I like to work. I like to pick something and get the expert on and just pick their brain so that I can learn as much as I can. So it seems like, that's what you're doing, like with Philip Mantel when you did Pascagoula 73, which I want to dig in a little bit more to that later on. But for anybody who hasn't watched that, it's really excellent. I think I got 10 minutes left of the last episode, which I'm really enjoying because it's just you and Philip. And he's just telling you about his experiences within ufology and then going into a couple cases. So I'm really glad you did that with that last episode. That was really cool.
Yeah,
I want to ask you if you're up to date with this, the Jake Barber witness that has come forward here recently in the last couple of weeks on Ross Coulthart, and then he did the interview with Jesse Michaels. We've been hearing this for the last couple of years that we're going to be getting these witnesses parading forward now. And he seems to be the first one besides David Grush that's coming forward that has real firsthand knowledge. What do you make of him, and what do you make of his story?
Quite remarkable, like interesting to say the least. And the other folks that have been introduced that are around him in his like Skywatcher team / I guess you would say like whistleblower group And it's not just him. There's people like John Blitch, who's come forward recently, Tim Gallaudet, all of which come from these backgrounds. Jay Stratton, Lou Elizondo. I don't know if I'm probably missing a few others, but
We should probably put Carl Nell in there.
yeah,
If
Colonel,
we're talking resumes,
yeah, exactly.
we should probably throw him in the mix.
So they're all pushing the envelope of disclosure, right? Which is, hey guys, we're not alone. And what does that not alone thing look like? What does it really mean? That's the more interesting aspect to me, because it's great that we have people that are connected in some way to possibly researching the phenomenon or interacting with the phenomenon from military and intelligence backgrounds.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you all for tuning in. If you're enjoying this episode and want to help us uncover more mysteries of the universe, don't forget to support Curious Dimension. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button. It really helps get this content in front of more people who are curious just like you. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to click that notification bell too, so you're the first to know when we release new content. For those of you listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure to follow or subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and review. It helps more than you know. And whether you're watching or listening, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below or send me a message. Thanks for being part of the Curious Dimension community. Your support keeps this journey going.
Because these are the two spheres of influence that you would expect to be at the tip of the spear in terms of probing and researching this phenomenon, because they have the technology, they have the financial means, from especially in the United States, where the military budget is almost $1 trillion every year, that type of thing. Compound that over the decades that they might have known about this type of phenomenon, it really means to me something important. So when they're coming and speaking to the public, I'm interested, but the most important thing for me is time. As a researcher and a documentarian, I'm able to go back and look at Pascagoula, which is a pretty well documentable event, right? There's all kinds of witnesses, there's all kinds of not only testimony, but reports and documentation and some pictures and video to go, or film of the time to go with it. Whereas this is brand new. We just have testimony. We have a little bit of video with Jake Barber. That's interesting. Lots of contention around it and people challenging it. That's fine. It should be challenged. It should be discussed. No one should be onboarding all of this information out the gate and believing everything 100%, because that leaves us susceptible to being taken advantage of. It also makes it harder for us to understand the bigger picture, like what's really going on in terms of the control of the discussion. I think it's going to be I guess, for lack of a better way of explaining it, a net positive, because we're going into a territory that has not been explored in the mainstream as much before. And the more that this gets discussed as being possibly credible and real, the more we can actually investigate it properly and really put claims to the test and find out if it's true.
Yeah, you mentioned something there that I want to pull a thread on. You mentioned controlling the discussion. So I know you were at the last hearings with Gallaudet, Elizondo, Schellenberger, and Mike Gold.
Yep.
And some people watching this, they may not know who Jeremy Corbell is, and some people might know who he is, but he's the one who brought some of the firsthand witnesses into Congress, I understand, and also had printout copies of the Immaculate Constellation document that Michael Schellenberger broke. But it was interesting. He seemed to be a little bit perturbed that the credit went to Michael Schellenberger for bringing that document forward when he clearly did, and it seemed like they knew that. I've gone back and forth with this and back and forth with this. I don't know Jeremy at all. but he seemed to have explained himself pretty well in his little series he did on Tubi. It does seem weird. They wouldn't just say who brought the document in and then also double down by putting a blank page at the end. So I've been going back and forth with this. Do you have an opinion on that? Could you tell me what the temperature was like in the room?
It was unbeknownst to me at the time, right? Like I was just in awe that I got to be in the actual hearing setting. I found out about this stuff afterwards, and I met Jeremy for the very first time, shook his hand right after the hearing. Nice guy, also vertically challenged as I am, but I think he's doing really good things in terms of bringing that documentation to Michael Schellenberger. The drama surrounding how it was presented and he was ghosted in terms of the chain of custody regarding that documentation and the history of who was really pushing for that kind of disclosure at the hearing, that I would feel a little bit dissed too. If, let's say, I made a documentary and at the end of the film, somebody else's name was in the credits for written, produced, and directed, and I was completely snubbed in the public when it was mentioned that I was actually the brainchild for that story. But I feel like there's also probably some reasons why that could have happened. It's perhaps it could have been a bit of a political game, and this is political theater that we're actually discussing. So Michael Schellenberger is a veteran journalist, right? He is somebody who literally writes for publications and has done some investigative journalism research on things.
And he's also testified multiple times, has he not?
He's also testified multiple times. So he's got those chops behind his name. And maybe Nancy Mace and the folks that knew this document would be put forth into congressional record, they wanted some veracity behind it with that type of academic and professional background. But I'm not downplaying what Jeremy has done, but he's more of a filmmaker, right? And I know that George Knapp is his mentor. George Knapp is a journalist. He's a newsman, right? He's a news anchor. He's been covering some stories for his whole life. Jeremy is a filmmaker, and he's done all kinds of things with his career, which is great. But that might be why that happened. And to me, the TMZ coverage of that is the TMZ coverage of that. That's what they're there for. Drama and reality TV sort of reactionary coverage of people with egos and battling opinions. If they're not covering the Kardashians, apparently now they're covering UFOs and UAP speaking personalities. And I totally get his reaction. But again, it is, TMZ.
And for the record, I think Jeremy catches a lot of flack all the time, but say what you want about it. The guy has done a lot for the subject over the last several years, just pushing for truth and honesty and putting things out there when really there's periods of time during the subject where nothing gets put out, like long stretches, and it's just people are regurgitating the same stories over and over again. It's an exciting time, and I think he's one of the reasons for that. He's him and George Knapp and the people that come to them that have information and leak things. He's a conduit for that. And so really people should be thanking him. And, but I can also see in the heat of the moment, like here's like these, we've only had a couple hearings here in a long time. And so emotions are probably high. There's maybe a little bit of ego kind of slivered in there. So I could see how that could happen. But yeah, I've been going back and forth with that for weeks now. I'm like, what is the deal with that? I'm like, does it really matter? And I was like, maybe it does matter. Maybe there is a control sort of a thing on it. And I was like, but even if there is, does that really matter? It's important that the information is getting out there.
Totally. Yeah, I think what's, for me, the most important thing is the documents. Thank you, Jeremy.
Exactly. Let's get back to your work for a minute here. What inspired you to do these documentaries? What got you interested in this subject in the first place?
I was curious, as curiosity will usually push people down certain paths or rabbit holes in this. And I was bored, definitely bored with my life at the time. I was working in insurance sales, not very fun. And I needed a bigger challenge, and I'm a creative person. So I actually went to school for film and video production, and I studied film and sociology in university. So I had a bit of a background looking from a bird's eye at a group and trying to understand how is this, how are these people murmuring together, and what is the phenomenon behind that. And then on top of that, being a filmmaker, independent filmmaker, working on some sets, film and television sets early on in my career. I was learning how to do this stuff and worked on reality TV sets in Toronto, Ontario, a show called like Rich Bride, Poor Bride. I was learning about the camera, learning about how to execute and record things and be creative. And then in high school, was started using video editing programs. I think I started with Pinnacle Studio DV or something, which was like a consumer grade editing program, but I did stuff with that. And eventually I sunk my teeth into the first story that I ever covered, which was like this Phil Schneider, The Underground expose. And I published that initially for free on YouTube. It was really crude, not the greatest sound, not the greatest music, not the best flow, and you name it, animations or interviews. But
It got you going.
got me going. And I just kept improving, iterating on top of that with every project that I took on after. And here we are now. It's 2025. I can't believe I'm still alive and I'm still doing it. I did in IT and do something from 9 to 5 for a long period in between really taking on the filmmaking thing more full time. I think COVID spurred the full time thing for me. But yeah, I've always just been into this phenomenon and storytelling.
Have you had a sighting or anything like that that kind of made you a little bit more curious?
Yeah, I've had 2 sightings that I can recall were weird. And the first one, I was in my early 20s flying from, I believe it was Denver, Colorado, west. And when I was on this flight, I was sitting in the window seat. I used to sit in the window seat all the time. I don't do that now. And when I was looking out the window, I was thinking about UFOs, believe it or not. And I looked up and I saw like a metallic looking cube. And I tried to get a camera to record it, which I had this like Sanyo 4K pocket cam at that time.
Mhm.
And this was before our phones had everything built into them. And as I was turning that on, which takes a few seconds, power up and all that stuff, the thing moved above the fuselage of the plane. And that was, I was really shocked when that happened. I thought maybe I was hallucinating, whatever. Was it a balloon? The person beside me, I was like panicked, and they're
Did
like,
other people see it on the plane?
no, just me. So it was like that Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, like what's going on here right now?
Yeah. There's a gremlin on the wing. But after that, when I was in my later 20s, I lived in Australia. I was actually building another sort of documentary at that time, like just getting interviews and stuff like that. And at night in Melbourne, Australia, I was walking in this suburb called South Oakley and going for some pizza with my roommate, this British guy. And we saw a light that was a very bright orb that went from over top of our heads and then flew over the horizon within seconds. It did a quick movement too. And it didn't get brighter or anything like a meteor might if it was like in the atmosphere burning up. And we just looked at each other and we're like, what the hell was that? And we went and got pizza.
Yeah, that's how most of these stories go. It's normally something that captures your attention. You don't have a box to put it in. And so you're immediately like, that's strange. And it burns a little memory, but then it's like, what do you do with it? And then it just sits there until maybe it comes up in conversation, maybe years down the road. I know multiple people that have had sightings like that, and they'll tell me about it. I've never seen anything. I've never had any type of sighting, but I'm deeply curious about this subject. I find it endlessly fascinating. And maybe you had this experience too, but when I first got into it, it was, I wrestled with it for a couple years because I had never heard anything like this before. It was like 2005 and YouTube had launched, and I just stumbled upon this. And to me, in the beginning, I was like, what is this? Is this some form of LARPing, like live action role playing? Are people just like making money off of this? And it took me a while to digest that some people are putting it on, but that other people are being 100% genuine. Did you have any of that wrestling factor with you, or because you had these sightings, maybe you were like, tell me about your kind of your progression into it?
I still am wrestling. I'm skeptical about a lot of people, and you can even see that in my work in Dark Alliance. So I know that not everything that's presented in this community is real. There are elements of truth to probably a lot of the things, but there are LARPers, live action role players. There are actors. There are literally people that I think have come to this community to grift, and they know that people believe pretty much everything and get super excited off the back of all the new news, and they prey on that. It's a little bit of everything. And then the coldest and hardest truths are the harder ones to find. And that's part of why I'm here. I want to try and find the greatest truth of it all. I think even if you haven't seen a UFO or seen an anomalous thing like that with your own naked eyes, there are other credible people that have. And there are very credible UAP or UFO videos that have emerged throughout the decades from all of the camera, collections that have happened throughout history with regards to this phenomenon. And part of my work has been going through that stuff and trying to present some really interesting cases. So you might not have seen everything, but you will eventually maybe see your own UFO. But there's probably cases that you also think are more credible than others, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that the data that we have now is we have such a large data set of different kinds of things. You could witness testimony, sensor data, the FLIR footage that came out with the New York Times article. It's getting harder and harder to put this in the box of nothing going on here, nothing to see. It's becoming insurmountable to the point where I go back and forth with the overt announcement, like the disclosure. Like sometimes I don't know if there will be like an overt announcement. Does there need to be an overt announcement from an authority figure? I know a lot of people want that. I don't know if that's necessary or what that would accomplish. I just feel like maybe this sort of slow drip, these more congressional hearings to the point where more classified and more damning documentation comes out, the point where maybe it's just a known thing. What's your opinion on like disclosure with capital D? Do you see that ever happening or
So disclosure with a capital D is supposed to be like the president announcing.
right?
And I don't know when that'll happen. It hasn't happened, but perhaps it will in the future. Perhaps we need the right type of president to do that, but we also need the right administration as well as intelligence and defense community around that person. And we might be building up towards that. Meaning, I don't trust everything that's going on with like new administrations, but Luna Paulina, she did this recent committee announcement to go after 9/11, JFK, MLK, and UAP secrecy announcements and research that will be presented to the public. And that's pretty new. That's pretty interesting. And obviously the motive there is to buy back trust from the public, because at this time the government is at an all-time low in trust from the citizens of the United States, Canada, multiple countries, the UK. So this country, the United States, that's doing that is really kind of pushing the envelope in terms of being transparent and trying to bring forward some new truths to answers people want to know about. I'm hopeful about that. I don't know what will happen. We have to see. But that is an example of an administration around a president that would create an environment where a disclosure with a capital D might happen. You can't have a president just all of a sudden walking to a podium one day and out of the blue saying, "Hey guys, we're not alone. All right, back to business. Take care." Right? I think it leads to that point because a president is provided information and the public is slowly dripped information, and the administration and certain thought leaders and professionals that work within it are digging into that information to try and provide the best and truest version of it to us all. That's the hopeful side, but I just don't think capital D disclosure happens without those kind of things in place. And even you look at who the director of intelligence would be and who all of these people that are put into power within the defense and intelligence establishment seem to be pro disclosure, like John Ratcliffe and all these people that seem to have discussed the issue publicly prior to this new administration. It seems like those things would lead to a capital D disclosure. Although Trump, on the other hand, is one of these people that has downplayed it and said, "I don't believe in it, but I believe pilots are very handsome and professional people." It's like he talks about some other weird stuff, and I believe they saw stuff, right? Believe it, right? I don't think he would be walking up to a podium without a troop or a group of people providing him data and really walking him down that path and saying, "Okay, now go to the podium and say this."
Yeah, because once you do that, it's like there's going to be endless questions. You're going to be like, your whole administration is going to be based around this thing that you've said, and questions will never stop. And the problem is that the topic it's so big and so wild, and that there may not be a lot of answers, or some of the answers may be a little bit uncomfortable, that you don't want to say some things. And there may be parts of it that you can't say because you've got national security at risk. And yeah, it's a can of worms if you're looking for that. But
yeah, those are the extra layers that didn't cover, right?
Yeah.
All kinds of motives and opportunities that could be exploited in a capital D disclosure environment or situation. And it's going to be hard to get there.
Yeah. But it does seem like there are some pieces in play that it could I guess it could happen. But yeah, I agree with you. It definitely seems like there's pieces in play that are pro-transparency. How transparency and on which topics, how much transparency on which topics will get put forward, I guess, is remain to be seen. But it is interesting that Representative Luna came out with that statement the other day saying that they're going to be pushing for transparency on the declassification of these documents, and UAP was in there. amongst other things like the JFK files, MLK, COVID-19 origins. So it will be interesting to see where they go with this. I don't think it's any secret now that Congress has sunk their teeth into this, and they're at least aware, and they're becoming more read in on this topic day by day. So that'll be interesting. I'll be very curious to see where that lands in the future. I wanted to ask you about Dark Alliance. To me, what you've done here is very different from what I've seen any other documentarian, any other sort of filmmaker do in and around this subject. Is you're taking great care, almost like of the community by bringing this story forward. I know hardcore researchers knew about this, but to the general wider public or somebody new coming into the topic, you're doing them a very big solid here, because there are people out there that take advantage of especially new people into the subject that may not know a whole lot. And so you're highlighting an event that happened that's very important. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to do that, number one, and how that kind of came about?
As somebody who came to the community originally with an idea that I thought was totally 100% true, as the years go by, you realize not everything in that story can be confirmed as true. And I was the perfect example of somebody that was swept up by all this. I was in a situation where I was vulnerable and I wanted to be part of something. And the community at large is like that. There's a lot of people that enter and they believe stuff immediately because they're actually going through a state of shock, possibly mentally, emotionally. And that's perfect timing for people to exploit you or take advantage of you, use you. And I felt this documentary can help push people away from that opportunity being taken on them, and to restore or correct the history of how things went down regarding certain thought leaders or influencers. Really, they were influencers at a time in the UFO community. And some people may argue they still are today. There's still great followers to some of these people, hundreds of thousands on YouTube, believe it or not, that watch every video that is published by them. And it was an opportunity to try to help provide some clarity. And I think as this phenomenon becomes more mainstream, there will be greater opportunity for people to take advantage of the community. And that's scary to me. And I also don't want that to happen. So that's why I made the doc.
Yeah, I think it was very important that you did that to at the very least, open people's eyes that there could be some of that going on in and around the subject. There definitely is, but it's important to expose people to that so that they can, when they're open to a new piece of information, don't get excited right away. Let it swirl around for a little bit, look into it, and see if that piece of information has legs. A lot of people come and go in this field that start talking about something and then it's gone. But yeah, I thought that was it's a great documentary for anybody that wants to go out there and know what we're talking about. We're talking about Dark Alliance. I think it's on Amazon Prime, correct?
Tubi TV, Roku.
Okay. Yeah, go check that out. I think it's a very important series, or is it a documentary?
It's a documentary series. So each episode is an hour and a half approximately.
Okay.
And we just talked to all the people that were surrounding these two while they became built up as celebrities within the community.
And it's interesting because maybe we could talk about Gaia TV for a second now, because Gaia, the streaming platform Gaia, was it on the rise as that was all happening as well?
Yeah. So I ended up interviewing Jay Widener, who was the former head of production at Gaia. He was one of the first guys there. So he watched the company grow from a really small startup to a multi-million-dollar entertainment company. And he helped create the, let's say, success and stardom of David Wilcock, who was one of their first stars. And then when Corey came along, he did the same thing by producing the show series Cosmic Disclosure, which still is going on today. I think they took down the Corey Good episodes because of this legal drama that they're in with him. The court date is set for April of this year.
Oh, that hasn't settled yet?
No, the court cases between Jay Widener, Leon Isaac Kennedy, Adrian Youngblood, Roger Richards Ramsour, Corey Good, and Alicia Montalbaldo. I think I'm pronouncing her name properly. Those have all settled. Those have been dismissed by the court because there was no evidence to prove the allegations he had set out against these people. Now, the biggest hurdle for him is a massive case against Gaia TV, Gaia Entertainment.
He started, correct? Or did Gaia start?
He started. He actually,
right. Nobody's coming after him.
That's right.
Okay.
It's what's called a slap suit technique, where you tie up people that you don't want to get access to certain monies, or you just want to put through financial and mental duress in legal cases in court with you. Gaia they're a victim of this legal technique. And with him, he says that his intellectual property are the Bluebird people, the sphere beings, and 20 and back and all that stuff. These themes get discussed on Gaia TV after he left, and he's suing them for using his intellectual property. It's going to be hard for him to win that case, considering that it was all being constructed at Gaia. And when you sign a contract as talent, when a entertainment network is literally producing your work, it's their IP.
Right.
And
they own that content.
Yeah. And I know that he filed for copyright and trademark after he left. And that's, he's gotten this lawsuit against them. If you read the PDF document, they're out there, the court files. It's all written in plain English, what he thinks he deserves and how he thinks Gaia has benefited and how they owe him. If they lose this case, I think they'll owe him millions of dollars at this point.
Wow. Yeah, I would say that I'm shocked, but in my life I've come across people that unfortunately do this kind of thing. And it's a shame, because it seems like, I don't know what it seems like. Let's go in a different direction here. It's a great documentary, Dark Alliance. Go watch that. I think it's important that you did that to shed light on something that happened, because it could happen again.
Good. Probably will.
Yeah, it probably will. Another one you did that I really loved was Crop Circle Realities. And that particular phenomenon, in my opinion, it doesn't really get a whole lot of attention. And yet here is this thing that is the most in-your-face phenomenon maybe on the planet. And it gets, in my opinion, it gets shut down quite a bit. So what motivated you to do that one? How did you become interested in the crop circle phenomenon?
At the time, I was covering stories that were originating from Jaime Maussan. This is the guy that has covered all kinds of cases around Latin America. Right now, he's been championing the Nazca mummies, which I don't really believe are real in terms of being like aliens or whatever. Back in 2018, 2019, I was interacting with him. I filmed in Mexico with him and then assembled a few documentaries. And Crop Circle Realities was an expose of the phenomenon, the sort of history of it, and how he got involved as a journalist from Mexico. And then talking to Gary King, who is a crop circle researcher, boots on the ground in England. I actually stay in touch with Gary. He's a really interesting guy. He has a channel called Against the Grain. People should definitely check out. And he's still covering new crop circles that emerge. I think there's definitely a case that some of this stuff is man-made, but there's UFO sightings and then really elaborate formations that show up within minutes or hours before daylight appears, and there's no humans that have accounted or really proven how they did that. And it's a mystery still to me. So I guess we could equate it to maybe some of them are non-human intelligence, especially like that the Chibolton NHI illustration with the disc and the answer to the Carl Sagan
Right.
message and stuff like that. Those are really cool to me. I'm just like, no one's ever claimed responsibility. They're super intricate. For example, NVIDIA did just like a crop circle that they made of one of their chiplets in the same area, the Wiltshire area of the UK countryside. And to complete it and make it look symmetrical from the sky and perfect like they did with the NVIDIA words at the bottom, took them a month. And this is with like designers, engineers, landscapers, all that stuff, and teams, and using technology to help create it. Some of this stuff is showing up in, like I said, hours or minutes. And Gary's case, one of Gary's cases, 777.
Yeah, I just had him on a couple weeks ago. We covered that one.
There you go.
But,
yeah, it's like,
and he catches a lot of flack for that. But
yeah, people say that he is a hoaxer and that like somehow he and a bunch of people made it, but he's
was there.
I was trying to shag this bird, and we went to the tent, and then we saw a flash, and I don't know if I'm just joking, but in the video, there's that old girlfriend or something that's in it, and it's part of history now.
Yeah, it is interesting. That particular phenomenon has captured me. So I'm a geometry instructor. I like what I was doing with this podcast initially was to marry these topics of a phenomenon with geometry and mathematics. And the crop circle phenomenon fit that perfectly because we have highly geometric things in there. These things are popping up very quickly. And so I felt very safe, like holding on to that line as I dip my toes in these subjects. And I felt the more I researched the crop circle phenomenon, the more I was starting to learn that there's a percentage of these things that pop up that do not have these hallmarks of mechanical flattening with people with ropes and boards on their feet. Some other form of sophisticated technologies being deployed to flatten these plants and to make these designs. What that is, I have no idea. But yeah. I don't buy that every single one of them are being mechanically flattened with ropes and boards. I don't buy that. There's something else going on here.
I think there needs to be more scientific investigation of it. And W.C. Levengood was one of these guys that kind of analyzed the crops and the soil around them. And they saw the capsules or the nodes of the wheat or the barley were like bursting and letting out steam in order to bend. Like details like that are very interesting to me because it points to something happening that's not just a board and rope, right? Whereas a board and rope, you just see the stalks of these plants crunched, broken. It's not a tender process, and it's very interesting.
Are you familiar with Jeff Wilson?
No.
So Jeff Wilson, he's the director of the ICCRA, the International Crop Circle Research Association. He actually lives and owns most of the property around Serpent Mound in Ohio. But he has studied the crop circle phenomenon in North America extensively. He's very smart. He's very meticulous. And he and his team have gone around voluntarily researching the crop circles in North America. And he knows W.C. Levengood. And I've had him on. We've done a 3-part podcast with him going over just 3 crop circles that he has analyzed and his team have analyzed thoroughly. But one of the questions I asked him was, when you take your controls of the crop inside the crop formation and you analyze those nodes, and then do you look at other crop that has been mechanically flattened, and do you see that apical node explosion or elongation? And they've done that, and they've published papers on that, and it doesn't have the same effect when you mechanically flatten it. So I found, like you just said, I found that very interesting that it appears like there's some sort of thing happening inside the plant that's causing it to bend or explode or elongate like that.
At
But
will.
yeah, I don't know what that is.
Me neither.
But it's one that boggles my mind every time I start talking about that. All right, we got about 10 minutes left, Darcy.
Sure.
I'd love to go for a ride down Speculation Town.
Okay.
Of all the work you've done, everything you've seen with the UFO phenomenon, do you have any working theory as to what maybe one aspect of it could be? Do you think it's multiple things? Do you think it's all part of one thing? What is your idea about this?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of things that could be at play here. When I think of things entering and exiting the oceans, and the idea that there's ocean-based structures that seem to be anomalous, in which these things might be emanating from, coming from trenches in the ocean, that type of thing, it points me in the direction of a ultra-terrestrial or shadow biosphere theory, in which there might be something here that's higher intelligence that doesn't interact with us but shares the world, or tries to avoid us and shares our domains, the earth in all its atmosphere. And then when you look at space, stuff that's been seen in the pioneering space missions of X-15, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and everything that came after it, right up through the STS missions building the ISS, and all of the satellites that we've sent out to other planets in our solar system, there seem to be anomalies and structures and UFO events that happen there. That makes me believe possibly that there could be extraterrestrial interaction within our solar system. And then when you think of Pascagoula 73, which we brought up a little bit earlier, these are two men that claim to have been abducted by more robotic beings, and later one recalled like a female kind of looking entity, but definitely a little bit non-humanish. It makes me think of Michael P. Masters' work in the extra tempestre model, where we're examining the idea here with this theory that possibly we are human 1.0 and human 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, as far as you go down this line in the future, could be coming back on the timeline in a time traveling device, which looks like a UFO, right? And they're taking us and they're examining us and they're doing some kind of scientific tests. And then there's other cases where the entities on board the craft or off the craft look completely different. And they may, in my opinion, not even be time travelers from our own bloodline. They might actually be something from beyond, another dimension, another solar system, another maybe from a shadow biosphere. I don't know. But what was Virginia? Those things we haven't seen too often or heard of by experiencers. They were like frog beings that secreted poisonous jelly from their skin, and their craft was spilling atmosphere that they were living in. They were scared. They didn't seem to be wearing any technology or have a true ability to communicate. They did squeal and make animal type noises. I'm not quite sure they were telepathic, but some people have stated, especially James Fox believes that. Stan Friedman covered the Betty and Barney Hill case, and those things were telepathic. They had human-ish eyes, but they were much larger, large craniums. They wore some kind of suit and small mouth, almost no nose, no real ears, something a little bit different. And then you get like the Greys and these mantis beings and all kinds of other non-human intelligence descriptions. I'm open to it. I think scientifically we might be able to find answers for the origins for all of these things if we live long enough to see those, right? To see the answers. And it would be exciting to live through a time that we get answers to this type of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that disclosure keeps moving forward and that we keep progressing forward so that we can get some answers on this. Because if you're going to study anything in the world, I don't know what would be more interesting than this. It's just, I find it endlessly fascinating. It's really an incredible subject for which there is a mountain of data to support.
Something
What's that?
that something is going on, right?
Something is going on. Yeah. And then it's just, what is that? It's just, it always seems so elusive, but yet undeniably there. So look, Darcy, this was a lot of fun. I've got a mountain of questions here I could ask you. I'd love to have you back on sometime if you're open to it. Tell people what you got going on, where they can find you, and what do you got coming up next?
So if people want to check out my catalog of previous work, they can go to my website, occultjourneys.com. They can type in my name, Darcy Weir, on Amazon Prime, Roku, Tubi TV, and see a catalog of my films that are published there, or Apple. If they want to take part in this conversation, I actually do a show once a week on KGRA Radio, and I host a Twitter space in which we host a town hall style meeting where speakers from all across the community, different belief systems, experiencers, you name it, jump up and discuss all the topics that we're covering. And we usually have guest speakers each week. And that's called Last Night on UFO Twitter. Yeah, and then on social media, on Twitter, my handle is @OccultJourneys, and Instagram, Darcy Weir Films. So I'm happy for people to reach out to me.
Yeah, excellent. What day of the week do you host your live stream on X?
Oh, yeah. Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, cool. I'll try to pop in there next week.
Yeah.
Darcy, this
jump
was
up.
super. What's that?
Jump up and I'll make you a co-host or something.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to chat with everybody about it. Darcy, this was really fun. Really happy you took the time to chat with me tonight. I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. If you're finding any value, please hit that subscribe button, that like button, and leave a comment. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps out the show.